Well, thank you very much, Michelle. I really appreciate you putting this on because I think it's most important. I'm just the very preliminary speaker. The main man is Dr. Hewett. So I'm just going to give you a few slides here. I really just want to talk about what's really obvious now. Next, please. And just how this all started for me, about a couple of years ago almost, I found out about these papers and I read them all, and I thought to myself, well, it's going to be either, next, it's going to be either that CCSVI is a very major factor in multiple sclerosis, or Dr. Zamboni is a fraud. Those are the only two possibilities after you read all his papers. Next. Well, there's no doubt that Dr. Zamboni is not a fraud. So, there's no doubt, no doubt. So, that takes us to our next thing. So, okay, what's really going on? What do we know now, a couple of years later? Well, over 20,000 people have had this done, and they found that 20,000 people have had blocked veins. And over 90% of the people they tested have major blockages in their veins. Next, please. Well, therefore, there's no doubt whatsoever. There's no doubt whatsoever now. This is a major part of multiple sclerosis. Next. And so we know that there are a few people who get misdiagnosed. And we know there's going to be a few cases where they're going to have a very hard time finding CCSVI. So if there's up to 95% of their finding, so you know, I would say it's almost a sure thing that it's a mandatory factor in multiple sclerosis. It's a major driving factor. Next, please. So that's the key factor here. We know it's highly associated. We know that those blockages were there before the MS disease process even started. And most importantly, once you understand what those blockages will do, there are major biological consequences of CCSVI for multiple sclerosis. And the 10 top things that CCSVI explains are: number one, the occurrence of a vein in all your MS lesions, right in the middle of everyone's vein. And the fact that all these lesions are always in a periventricle, that's where we find them. That can be explained very well by CCSVI. Next. We find the presence of very low blood flow in people with MS, hypoperfusion. We know there's the presence of the iron deposits that are associated with lesions. There is the breakdown of the blood-brain barriers, which can be caused easily by CCSVI pressures. They've done studies and they've shown that the myelin breaks down before the immune system even goes inside the central nervous system. So the inflammation occurs after the problem. Well, the problem is caused by CCSVI. And we know many people have damage in the optic nerves, and there is no myelin there. So it's not a myelin attack. So I think all the evidence now we're seeing is multiple sclerosis is a neurodegenerative disease and not an autoimmune disease. And that explains why the drugs they're so eager to sell you don't do very much, because they're not attacking the main problem. They're just attacking a minor part of it, which is the inflammation, which is fine. Maybe you want to do something for that, but 90% of multiple sclerosis isn't being touched by the drugs. And number 10, and most importantly, I think, we know many, many people have had major improvements following treatment. Well, that tells you it's got to be part of the whole show. Next, please. And one more obvious fact about CCSVI and MS is that the neurologists and the MS societies are in a terminal case of denial. And they don't want to even talk about it. Next. And they are a classic case of willful blindness. They just will not have a look at it. Next. And we can understand why. That's just a trait of us all. If there's something out there that's going to harm us, especially financially, we tend to not even have a look at it. And that's what's going on with that part of it all. Next. Oh, here we go. Okay. So the most obvious fact of all, I think, is there's no doubt that CCSVI is a very key part of the disease process. And once you understand that, then it becomes obvious that it's most important to get the CCSVI treated as soon as possible, because every day it's maybe doing just a little more damage. Next, please. So I also would like to emphasize, besides getting the veins opened up, I think you also have to do nutritional strategies, which will get the vascular health. So after you have your veins opened up, you want to have your veins as healthy as possible afterwards. They will also protect the blood-brain barrier. They will counter any inflammation that's going on, and they will also take care of the oxidative reactions. So that's all the things that are going on because of CCSVI. You want to counter those with nutrition. So in my conclusions are CCSVI is a key part of the MS disease process, and it basically is a requirement to get the multiple sclerosis. Next. And the really good news is CCSVI can be treated very effectively with angioplasty. Next. And so the next conclusion is, well, if you have MS, you should go and get angioplasty. Next. And you want to be very, very wary of anything a neurologist or the MS Society has to say about CCSVI, because they have very self-serving motives. So don't believe what they have to say to you. And my very last slide, very last comment is CCSVI treatment and nutrition, I think, are the keys to have your best bet for doing something very positive and perhaps even stopping multiple sclerosis. Thank you very much.